So we start or like we can spend another. Okay, so welcome everybody, and this is the first talk of our 2020 Nobel Prize Special Colloquium series organized by VSM, the very serious meeting of RRI Astrofloor. So the VSM had started actually a few months back by the students and postdocs of RRI, and since then it has been a good program, and we are celebrating this 2020 Nobel Prize series lectures. As part of this, we have 3 lectures. First, we are starting with chemistry on CRISPR. So it's my pleasure to have Basudev with us today. He's been a very old friend and good friend to me. And so Basudev did his master's from Calcutta University back at home. And then he moved to Indian Institute of Science just across the road in the organic chemistry department, where he did his thesis with Santanu on polymerase process and developing anti-cancer drugs. I mean, application to anti-cancer. So he has wide range of research interest, starting from chemical biology. Starting from using telomerase as an anti-cancer drug target, chemically induced activation of small molecules in beta cells, which can be useful in controlling type 1 and 2 diabetes. He also has extensively worked on chemical biology of CRISPR. Specifically, he has developed several chemically controlled CRISPR system, often using small molecules and lights, and related gene editing applications. So he will be talking to us today about CRISPR technique, which is a fascinating technique to edit genes, which led to the 2020 Nobel Prize in Chemistry. So over to you, Basudev.
Thanks. Okay, should I get going? Am I not? Can you hear me properly? And
yes, I can hear you properly. Please go ahead.
Okay, then I'll get going. All right. Hello everyone. Hope you all are doing great and are safe. So first of all, I'll begin with thanking the organizers, especially to Dr. Patu Naren, and also to RRI for giving me this opportunity to bring the exciting science of CRISPR to you this afternoon. The topic of this lecture or discussion is CRISPR, a crispy gift from microorganism to mankind for gene editing. However, before I go to the details of this work or presentation, one thing that I like to mention to all of us, or remind to all of us, that we are still in the middle of a pandemic situation. Please follow the government guideline and follow the safety rules, as well as keep social distancing. Let's fight this pandemic and this battle rather in together and from a safe distance. So keeping the diversity of the audiences in today's discussion in mind, I'd like to spend a couple of minutes in the beginning introducing basic cellular processes to make sure that everyone is on board and we can have the discussion or enjoy the discussion together till the end. So after that, I will walk you through some of the history of CRISPR and how it led to the recognition of Nobel Prize in Chemistry this year. We'll also have glimpses of achievements with CRISPR, and we'll discuss future prospect of it. At the end, we'll have question answer if you have any doubt. So let's start with recapitulating basic structure and function of cells. The smallest subunit of any living organism is called cell. A cell has 3 important components, no matter what kind of cells they are. The first component is the cell membrane that separates the cell from its environment. The second component is a jelly-like matrix called cytoplasm. And third component is its genetic material, DNA. In general, there are 2 broad categories of cells. One is eukaryotic cells, which has organelles, the different compartments inside. For example, nucleus, where you can find DNA. Eukaryotic cells are more advanced and complex, which you can find in higher organisms, for example, plant and animals. The second category is prokaryotic cells. Prokaryotic cells do not have any organelles, but they do have genetic material or DNA, but not inside nucleus. Prokaryotic cells are always unicellular organisms. For example, bacteria, which you can see only under microscope. Thus, we'll call bacteria as microorganism. Cell use DNA as the template to make other components, for example, RNA and protein. First, a machinery that binds onto the DNA and start unzipping or opening the DNA and start copying only one of the strands. In this process, cell will copy the genetic information that is already embedded into the DNA to a new molecule. As you can see in the yellow in color, this is called RNA. This process of making RNA from DNA will call as transcription. Once the RNA molecule is formed, then it undergoes some editing. It is known as splicing. In this process, cell will remove the unnecessary part and come out of the nucleus to the cytoplasm. In cytoplasm, it binds with another machinery called ribosome. Ribosome is a machine that can read the genetic information which has come from DNA to RNA and synthesize a new molecule based on that. It's called protein. This process of making protein from RNA is called translation. So you can imagine a picture where DNA transfers the information to RNA, and then RNA information gets transferred to protein. So in this overall process, there are two crucial steps. One is transcription, making of RNA, and translation, making of protein. So first question that we should ask, what is gene editing? Making any changes in the DNA that leads to change in the RNA and subsequently in protein is called gene editing. However, you can achieve the similar change in the protein just by targeting the intermediate RNA or directly by targeting protein itself. It's called post-translational modification or PTM. One thing we need to remember, the reason I have highlighted in red, gene editing is always permanent. However, RNA editing or PTMs, they're transient. So if we combine all the DNA in one cell, we'll call it as genome. Our genome is enormous. It consists of almost 3.2 billions of base pairs, A, T, G, and C. And a segment of gene that can code for a protein we'll call as gene editing. The obvious next question comes, why do you need gene editing in the first place? Suppose you have been asked to type A, T, G, C 3.2 billion times. It might be possible, it is quite possible actually, to make one or two mistakes. In our cell, if cell does this mistake in a wrong position, for example, if it makes a mistake so that it incorporates a signal for stop codon, and that will stop synthesizing crucial protein. Let's say if it is a dystrophin protein, then it can lead to deadly genetic disease like muscular dystrophy. To repair such kind of genetic error, we need to have a method, we call it gene editing. That's the reason we need to have gene editing. However, finding out this error site and correcting it is not that straightforward. It will require 3 different modules. One, a powerful search engine, and then a binder with which it can hold on to the error site. And third component is a sharp cutting tools which can do genetic manipulation. So far, scientists have developed 4 different gene editing methods, 3 of which are based on protein. And the recent addition is CRISPR, which is a combination of protein and RNA. If we combine their activity and efficiency in terms of feasibility, CRISPR stands out. It is much superior than any other method. Before we learn about the reason behind its superiority, let us learn a little bit more about the bacteria where you can find such CRISPR system. Under microscope, our hand may look like this. You might see thousands of bacteria and viruses, and some of them might be pathogenic and deadly, so you need to be very careful about it. However, have you ever thought that whether these bacteria are safe in their own wall or not? Actually, they are not. They are on constant attack from their own enemy called virus or bacteriophage. A bacteriophage that can attack bacteria and inject its genetic material, either it could be DNA or RNA. After that, it can hijack the cellular machinery, bacterial cellular machinery, to make its own RNA, DNA, and protein. After that, it can make tons of new virus particles and its progeny or its babies inside bacteria. And it can burst it open and lyse the cells to kill it. And it can exit from the cell to infect a new bacteria. Then shouldn't we expect all the bacteria to be dead by now? But that's not the case. In a single drop of seawater, you can find millions of bacteria and close to 10 millions of viruses and other organisms. So scientists are always curious how this happens. how they coexist. Human in nature are always attracted or curious about patterns, like the pattern in the stars. Similarly, a molecular biologist, Francisco Mojica, when he was studying the bacterial physiology, he found that a distinct pattern in bacterial gene or genome. These are repeats. That means the same gene sequence coming over and over again. And they are separated by another gene sequence, DNA sequence called spacer. Later on in 2002, with Ruud Janssen, he named it as cluster regularly interspaced short palindromic repeats or CRISPR. Subsequently, in year 2005, Dasko found out that this spacer sequence, they are extrachromosomal. That means they are not of bacterial origin. He also proposed that these spacer regions might be, so bacteria might have a mechanism to acquire a foreign genetic material and store it. And that is how once it have it, then it can be immune to such bacteria. So basically, CRISPR system is involved in bacterial defense system. In dairy industry, especially in cheese and yogurt, we use different kinds of bacteria. And these bacteria are always susceptible towards infection, phage infection or bacterial infection. And that can lower down the efficiency or production ability. So this is a big concern, or contamination of phages is a big concern in dairy industry. So people are looking for mutants of bacteria that can be resistant against viruses. At the same time, Barangu and Horvath, they demonstrated that once you incorporate a particular sequence of virus into bacterial genomes, especially in the CRISPR gene, you can make the bacteria resistant against that virus. This was a huge achievement for dairy industry. However, scientists had very limited knowledge how it exactly works. For example, how bacteria captures foreign DNA inside its gene, inside its CRISPR gene or array, and how they process in the later stages to form RNA molecules, and what are the other elements involved in forming effector complex that can interfere with further viral infection and involve in the bacterial immunity. So in 2016, on 7th of October, 5 scientists were awarded with Warren Alpert Foundation as the pioneer in CRISPR discovery. The reason I'm mentioning this, because in this meeting, first of all, I got a chance to interact with 2 brilliant scientists, one Jennifer Doudna and Emmanuel Charpentier. And also the date is really important. On exactly after 4 years, on 7th of October 2020, bacteriologist Emmanuel Charpentier and RNA biologist Jennifer Doudna were selected for Nobel Prize in Chemistry for their development of methods for gene editing using CRISPR. So this is the landmark paper that came in 2012 from collaboration of Jennifer Doudna and Emmanuel Charpentier, where they deciphered and found out the exact mechanism by which the way CRISPR works. They also published several other fundamental research articles on CRISPR and deciphered each of the steps and explained how exactly it works. For example, how exactly bacteria captures or processes the invading genetic material and store it, captures it, and then how they process it in the form of pre-CRRNA, which will be further processed with an enzyme called RNase-3 to make small CRRNA. They also discovered another RNA molecule, tracer RNA, which can bind with CRRNA, and in combination with enzyme like Cas9, it can form effector complex. And they also discovered how exactly it can recognize DNA in a sequence-specific manner and use a double-stranded DNA. And what's the exact mechanism of the role of CRISPR system in bacterial immunity. In a simplified version, the molecule tracer RNA first binds with CRRNA, with forming a duplex segment. And this CRRNA also has another portion known as spacer, this 20 nucleotide spacer. This spacer is crucial or important for DNA targeting. It gives the specificity for targeting. So once this complex forms, then Cas9, that enzyme, can bind and form an effector complex. The first thing they did, they modified and made it simple by connecting the CRRNA and tracer RNA and made a simple system and form a small single guide RNA or sgRNA. For the first time, Jennifer Doudna and Emmanuel Charpentier demonstrate CRISPR-Cas9 mediated gene editing in vitro. So here is a animation, beautiful animation from Nature Publishing Group, and it shows how exactly Cas9 works. So first, the blue molecule, that is the protein Cas9, binds with the guide RNA, sgRNA highlighted in red, and it forms Cas9 complex. This Cas9 complex is an active nucleus, that means it can cut DNA. But how? First, it looks for a sequence in our double-stranded DNA called protospacer adjacent motif, or PAM sequence. This PAM sequence is kind of like postal code for delivery. So when it finds that, then the guide RNA 20 nucleotide spacer that I just mentioned, that comes into play. It opens the DNA in this segment and forms RNA DNA, a mixed hybrid. It's called RLO. Once this complementarity matches to a great extent, then Cas9 undergoes enormous structural change. What it does, it first activates its nucleus domain, two seizures. It has two seizures here and here. It activates that and then induces a double-stranded DNA break. This is how Cas9 can sequence specifically bind to a DNA and induce a double-stranded cut. So the advantage of basically protein-based system is it uses programmable guide. And this programmable guide gives the flexibility. Did it get stuck? I just wait to make sure that everything.
No, it's fine. Go on.
It's fine, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, it has a programmable guide that makes it perfectly flexible. So it can manipulate in several ways. One thing we have to remember that this particular sequence, it's 20 nucleotide guide RNA spacer, that determines the target sequence. That determines the sequence specificity. Now imagine if we have to target different regions in our genome, let's say these 4 gene sequence, and they are going to be different in sequences. So we can make use of the same Cas9 protein, but manipulate these 20 nucleotides at designated destination. So it becomes extremely flexible to recognize virtually any genomic location in our genome and do genetic manipulation or genome engineering. So after Doudna and Charpentier demonstrated the biochemical gene editing process with Cas9, then another giant, I'll say, synthetic biologist, George Church, and young but exceptionally talented scientists found, and what they did, they first modified the CRISPR enzyme in such a way that it can modify or do gene editing in mammalian cells. So for the first time, they showed the genome engineering in human cells. So after double-stranded break happens, then there are several possibilities. So you can either disrupt the functional gene or delete the gene which is responsible in disease, or you can also insert a foreign gene, or you can do epigenetic modification or transcriptional regulation, or even single base resolution correction called base editing. Also, you can employ this system in detection, for example, diagnostic. So I'll explain each of them in a simple language in next few slides. For example, let's say if we know that this particular gene C is responsible for disease, so we need to do two things. Either we can disrupt this function or we can delete it. The way you can do that just by inducing a double-stranded break or break in the gene C and allow the cell to repair. So what happens once you induce a break? Then first of all, it will lose some of the fragments on both sides, and then after that, cellular enzyme like coenzyme protein that can bind and stabilize it. It can also recruit several other enzymes, for example, DNA apicases and then Artemis, and then it will try to ligate or join the two broken end with the help of an enzyme called ligase. So in the entire process, what it will either lose the function of gene C, or it will entirely lose the gene itself, which is also depicted on the left side. However, once you induce a double-stranded break in particular genomic sequence or DNA, we can also bias the repairing mechanism by providing a donor template highlighted in the blue color. So you can incorporate a foreign gene as far as whatever you want, into this cut site with this donor template. But in many genetic diseases, the change is not that enormous. there might be a simple change from A base to T base, and that can, if that is in the crucial gene like let's say hemoglobin, that can lead to another deadly disease called sickle cell anemia. So to correct that, we don't have to do a lot of gene editing. We need to just revert it back from T to A. And the exceptional chemical biologist David Liu came up with a solution for this. So he developed a method where he conjugated an enzyme with Cas9, which can do specific or precise chemical reaction on DNA, and it can change one base to another. That is how you can revert the mutation and repair genetic disease. So by now we know that how to do genetic manipulation or gene editing on DNA using CRISPR-Cas9. Then the question comes, is it possible to modulate the downstream process? Let's say transcription, which is a process of making RNA from DNA without touching the DNA. Because if you make any change on the DNA, that's going to be permanent and you don't know the effect of it in the long term. So if we can develop another like orthogonal method where you can directly manipulate the downstream process, it will be great. So another young scientist, but extremely talented Stan Lee, with Doudna and Jonathan Weissman, and many others, he developed an orthogonal system for transcriptional regulation. He developed a system where you can turn on and off transcription process. What he did, he first removed the two scissors from Cas9, the highlighted ones here, so that you can make it a dead Cas9, or nucleus dead Cas9 or dCas9. So this complex can still bind to DNA, but it cannot do a cut. Then if they fuse the transcription machinery, for example, transcription activator, directly or through a string of peptide. And Function Group developed another beautiful method where you can directly recruit the transcription activator onto the guide RNA. So once you have that, then you can deliver on the genomic loci or genomic side, then it can recruit different enzymes involved in transcription. For example, RNA polymerase. You can initiate transcription process of making RNA. Apart from making an on transcription on system, scientists also attached another protein domain called TRAP that can physically block the access to the gene, and you can turn off the system. In another process, scientists have fused a reporter protein called fluorescent protein to the Cas9 so that you can identify the precise location of particular gene sequence in our genome. All right, so we have the system to edit the transcription or modulate the transcription as well. Then the next question comes, is it possible to modulate further downstream, that is translation or making a protein? Let's see how it happens. So for this, Function again came to the picture. He identified another enzyme called Cas13. Unlike Cas9, which targets DNA, Cas13 can target RNA, and it can target the invading RNA from RNA virus, and that's how it protects the bacterial cell. So he was able to use this technology or Cas13 to directly target mRNA or the intermediate, and if you degrade that, that's definitely going to interfere with the synthesis of the, let's say, disease-causing protein, and you can cure the disease, genetic disease. That's great. How about the RNA? Can you target that with CRISPR as well? David Liu gave the answer. Okay, unlike the previous approach where he was able to do chemical modification on DNA, here he developed another method to modify the RNA bases. So he employed Cas13 gene, Cas13 protein. However, it's a dead Cas13. It's called dCas13, which can recognize a specific sequence of RNA. And now he fused another enzyme called methyltransferase. What it can do, it can precisely modulate particular RNA base and do the modification. The last component is the protein. Is it possible to target the protein as well with CRISPR? So one thing I would like to mention that there are various brilliant methods to target proteins via post-translational modification. However, for the first time, Craig Chew's group developed a method to target the protein with CRISPR directly. So what he did, he developed two molecules. One is RNA DNA conjugate, where this RNA part can bind to the Cas9, dead Cas9, dCas9, and this molecule, the black portion, it can bind to a domain which is already attached to Cas9. Now it has two open ends. One is this DNA, and this is another molecule, green in color. So in the next step, what it can do, the DNA fragment, it can bind to different transcription factor, which is involved in transcription. And this blue molecule, that can recruit a degradation machinery inside cell. That is how you can induce proximity-induced protein degradation, and you can degrade this particular transcription factor. Okay, after achieving the genetic manipulations, the other component is detection or diagnostic. Now we'll see how CRISPR can be used in diagnostic purpose. For that, people have started using Cas13d. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I need to turn that. Okay, all right. So Cas13, what it does, once it's programmed to detect a viral DNA, a viral RNA rather, and when it finds that, then it activates itself. It becomes a non-specific RNA degrader. It sets up DNA, any DNA coming close to it, and it's called bystander effect or non-specific effect. So a brilliant group of scientists led by Jonathan, Umar, and Fang, as well as Kunin, they utilized this unusual behavior of Cas13 and demonstrated that and applied that in detection of various pathogenic disease or as well as genetic disease. So I will give an example how they were able to employ this system in detecting COVID-19. So first they collected the sample and then, first they collected the sample from the patient and then extracted the RNA. In the next step, they amplified the level of RNA in the sample. And they also added this is called reporter RNA. After that, they introduced Cas13, which is programmed to detect only the viral RNA. As you can see, when it finds that, it becomes activated and it becomes a shredding machine for RNA. Now, any RNA that comes in the proximity will be degraded, including the reporter RNA, as you can see here, and then it will start emitting signal. So basically, this signal is nothing but indication of finding viral RNA in the sample. And you can load the sample onto a commercial chip. And if there is no viral RNA, then the intact reporter that collects in the first level. And if there is viral RNA, then it gets collected in a different level. So the detection becomes really easy to spot. Another method that is developed, that is recently developed in India from Devijyoti Chakraborty and Souvik Maitri group. This brilliant group developed a technique called Feluda, where they employed a different enzyme to detect COVID-19. Let's see how that works. Once they collected the sample from suspected patient, then extracted RNA and then made it a cDNA, and from there, they amplified to a double-stranded DNA. At the same time, they attached a hook or anchor to the double-stranded viral DNA. After that, they added another enzyme called FN-Cas9, Francisella noviscilia Cas9. However, it's a dead Cas9. And they designed the guide-RNA in such a way that it specifically recognized the double-stranded RNA, the double-stranded DNA of the virus. Now, you can make such kind of complex. Now, it has two tags. One is the anchor or the tag, and the other one is the fluorophore label for signaling. Now, if you allow it to bind with its counter tag, then this portion it binds to the well, and you can collect the signal in that spot. So basically, you can pour this sample onto a commercial chip, and again, you can get a signal once the sample has COVID positive or it has the viral RNA in the beginning. So far I have discussed how CRISPR-Cas9 has been utilized in numerous applications, starting from targeting DNA, RNA, and proteins. Then the obvious question comes, how safe it is to use CRISPR in gene editing? To understand that, let us look at the even more closely. Let's say we have to edit this particular gene. First thing, we need to know the exact sequence of that gene. And according to that, we have to design the guide RNA so that there is no mismatch. It's perfectly complementary to this target gene. However, you can imagine in an unfortunate event, there could be another gene which might be closely related to this gene sequence. And let's say if the gene sequence is quite similar and different only at the distal end, that might be a problem. One thing we should know that the early sequences from 1 to 10, this is called seed region. These sequences are more important in recognition and binding. Thus, if you do not have any mismatch in this region, but you have only in the distal end, So this guide RNA won't be able to distinguish between this target gene and this off-target gene. So you'll eventually end up cutting both the genes, and we'll call it as off-target effect. So off-target effect is one of the biggest challenges in CRISPR-mediated genome engineering. There are many other challenges. For example, uncontrolled Cas9 activity can lead to off-target mediated genotoxicity, as well as it can do damage to the chromosome. It can also activate P53 mediated cell death, as well as it can lead to mosaicism in case of embryonic editing. Due to several other serious concerns, so people also tried to develop a modular system. I have also developed 3 different strategies to develop modular CRISPR system for a dose, temporal, and inhibition control. So I'll explain one of them or maybe 2 of them in the next slide. So what I did, I developed a system where you can chemically control CRISPR system. You can turn it on and off using just by drug molecules. For that, what I did, I fused a destabilized domain, genetically fused destabilized domain with Cas9, and that can translate into a fusion protein. So this Cas9 gene that can synthesize Cas9, whereas this destabilized domain will be a tag to the Cas9, and as this domain remains in misfolded form, so cell has a mechanism to take care of it. So in our cell, if there is any misfolded or poorly folded protein, so that will be recognized by an enzyme called E3, and then E3 can bind to E2 and followed by E1 mediated ubiquitination. It's like tagging with ubiquitination molecule. Once there is enough number of ubiquitination molecule onto that misfolded protein, then cells get a signal to transfer it to its shredding machine. It's called proteasome. With the help of energy or expense of energy from ATP, it will degrade the misfolded protein inside proteasome and recycle it. So following this similar strategy, so our fusion protein will also undergo degradation and there won't be any functional protein. However, there are certain small molecule or drug molecule that can specifically bind to this destabilized domain and protect it from cellular degradation so that you can have a functional or active CRISPR system. So basically, just by using drug molecule, you can turn on and off the system. Here, I have shown the generating efficacy of that drug controlled CRISPR system, where you can see this is the untreated cell where cells are happily expressing EGFP protein, green fluorescent protein, whereas the engineered system without drug molecule, it can still express the EGFP gene and you can see the signal. However, as soon as you add the drug molecule, you can see the Cas9 gets activated and the signal gets disrupted. There will be knockout. So you can just activate or make the Cas9 active only in the presence of drug molecule. Following the similar strategy, we also developed a method where you can employ both light and small molecule at the same time to precisely activate Cas9. As you can see, the cells which receive both drug molecule and light, you can see gene knockout of EGFP gene, whereas the cells which didn't receive the light, it is still intact. In another method, I have also developed a chemically controlled transcription system here with Chris. What I did, I have developed an orthogonal system where the destabilized domain or the misfolded protein domain that is fused with transcription activator. Now this transcription activated fusion protein will remain intact only in the presence of drug molecule, and it can activate its corresponding target gene. From this plot, as you can see, without drug molecule, the transcription level is really low. As soon as you introduce the drug molecule trimethoprim TMP, you can see the activation of transcription in this gene. Not only that, you can just fine tune the dose of the drug molecule and control the level of RNA inside cell. So there are numerous other applications where CRISPR-Cas9 has revolutionized. One of them is gene drive. Gene drive is a process to control the gene propagation. So in normal Mendelian inheritance, there is always 50% chance of parental gene inheritance in its progeny. That's how we maintain the diversity in a population. However, CRISPR can be used to manipulate such propagation. You can either propagate a particular gene in the population, or you can even change the gender of the progeny. For example, if you take an engineered mosquito with CRISPR system, and you can make both the progeny male, And that is how you will end up having all the male in the populations. So basically, you can shrink the female population in the community, and you can force it to extinction. So this method is so powerful. It is being tested now to eradicate mosquitoes in the US, so that we can fight against malaria and dengue. The second domain, which I couldn't touch at all, is the agriculture sector. CRISPR-Cas9 has revolutionized and made it possible to enhance the production of crops. And you can also manipulate gene in plants to make genetically modified plants. For example, let's say paddy, of number of pores on the leaf, so that it requires less water for the production of rice. You can also develop plants which are more resilient to heat and dryness. The third domain, which is extremely controversial, is the human embryo editing with CRISPR system. In 2018, January, a Chinese scientist, he reported the birth of 2 CRISPR babies. So what he did, he took egg from mother and sperm from a father who already has HIV. Now, in normal scenario, if they want to have a baby, the baby is also going to get HIV. So what he did IVF, in vitro fertilization. At the same time, he injected CRISPR-Cas9 into the system so that it can target a specific gene called CCR5, which is responsible for HIV infection. So he edited in such a way that in the fertilized egg, there won't be any CCR5 gene. Now then he transplanted that into mother's womb, who gave birth to 2 babies. Now these babies will not have any CCR5, so they'll be resistant to HIV, and there won't be any possibility of HIV infection. One thing I'd like to sincerely mention that I sincerely apologize to many other phenomenal scientists whose work I couldn't include in this presentation due to the short time limits. So what's next? What can you do with CRISPR now? CRISPR has huge potential to enhance the production of crop, obviously, and that can provide a solution for hunger. At the same time, CRISPR is already on its way to provide solutions for genetic disease and pathogenic diseases. Once we have that, then we can also leverage, and you can think of other, not necessary, but with other applications, for example, designer baby. But as long as we have the problem with hunger and disease, the concept of designer baby with CRISPR system should be limited and restricted to sci-fi concept. So with that, I'd like to conclude my talk here, and I'd like to acknowledge at the same time. And first, I'd like to acknowledge my PhD supervisor, Professor Shantanu Bhattacharya, and Professor K. Muniappa, my close collaborator, and also my postdoctoral guide, Amit, and Prized and Matt, my mentors, as well as the collaborators in Chaudhary Lab, as well as my other collaborators outside lab, Fangzhang Lab, Soldar's Lab, David Liu Lab, Marafini, Paul and Bridges Lab, and Ralph, as well as my funding agencies, CSI and Broad NextGen. And I'd like to also thank my wife for helping me with the setting up Zoom. So with that, I'd like to thank you all for your time and participating in this talk. Thank you all. If you have any questions, then I'd like to answer them here. Otherwise, you can also contact me through either email or via social media. Thank you again.
All right. Thank you, Basudev, for a nice talk and quite an interesting elaboration. So, so the floor is open. So questions, comments, you can raise your hand, or you can, you can raise your hand and or go ahead and ask questions. Yeah. So Ritavan, please go ahead.
Hi. So I have a question which is probably pretty naive, but I'm just curious. So if some change is made in one part of the gene,
right,
or maybe in one cell, but then organisms are, you are saying about this, crops have, there are some changes have been made, etc. So if there are multicellular organisms, how can that change propagate into all the cells? Unless you do it at the very beginning when cell division has just started or something like that.
Exactly. So the efficiency of CRISPR is a concern. Unless you make the change in the beginning during the development, now the efficiency or targeting efficiency is a challenge. So the let's say the success rate, it will depend how many cells you can target with CRISPR. But in many of the disease, so you don't have to manipulate or edit 100% cells. A certain percentage of editing might be sufficient to let's say survival, or might be able to rescue from certain disease.
Okay.
So that's the problem with the delivery. So how efficiently can you deliver CRISPR system to cells? That will determine the success rate. Yes, definitely.
Okay, thank
you. So any other questions or comments for Vasudev? Okay, I had a question, Basu.
Yes, please.
Yeah. So where you said that this chemically induced this CRISPR, when you can activate and deactivate in with the help of drug. Right. So I mean so you have to for a practical application, you also have to be sure that this drug is not messing around with other other component of the cell or material, for example, right?
Definitely. So yeah, that's a really great concern actually. So the drug molecules I have used, one of them is antibiotic. It's called trimethoprim. Okay. We generally use that as antibiotic drug molecule. So that is like close to like orthogonal, bioorthogonal in our system. So it doesn't have any effect on our system unless the concentration is very high. So in that respect, the drug is orthogonal and it is
all right. Okay. Suman has a question. Suman, please go ahead.
Yes, I had a question that in one of your slide, I don't remember, you said that just only a change of T to A can sufficient to register disease. So my question is how a protein exactly find what T that should be changed. I mean, there is so many T's and A's. How the protein find the exact position?
Yes, that's the reason you need a delivery enzyme. Now we are using Cas9 system for delivering that particular enzyme, which can alter the base from T to A, or let's say A to T. Okay, so we use Cas9 as the delivery agent and like vehicle, and it can, depending upon the guide RNA sequence, it can specifically deliver that to a particular genomic locus. Okay, let's say if you have a mutation in particular sequence, then you will design the guide RNA in such a way that the Cas9 can bind. Actually, if I can go to the slide, that will be good. Otherwise, anyway, so basically that totally depends upon the guide RNA 20 nucleotide spacer. So you have to design in such a way that the enzyme reaches to that genomic site. I have already discussed how we can like deliver a Cas9 system, a complex, to a particular genomic locus just by designing the guide RNA. So that is quite possible.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any further questions, comments for Vasudev? Okay, if not, let us thank Vasudev for the nice colloquium. And if you wish, please unmute yourself and clap.
And one thing I'd like to mention that if anyone has any question, further question, they can directly contact me with my email ID. So I'll be able to reply.
Yeah.
All right. Once again, thank you, Naren, and thanks all the other organizers for giving me this opportunity. Hope it was helpful to everyone, and I was able to contribute in some way.
Sure. Thank you, Vasudev, for being with us. And yeah, it's a great pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks.